does happen in the parents' circle, Robi? What's some of the process that you use? This is Julie speaking.
Well, we do a lot of projects. A lot of them are based on narratives. And I'm going to tell you about one of the important adult education programs that we run, which is really, really important because I think you can import it into other places in the world. It's not necessarily just for Israel and Palestine. What we discovered about each other was that we had an innate sense of trust, or an innate sense of sympathy is even a better word. But that didn't mean that we had empathy for each other's causes, or for each other's national narrative, or anything like that. So we went personally, 140 of us, through this whole process of discovering each other's narrative, how we see, it's called history through the human eye, how we see our history, how we see the milestones of our history. We went to the Holocaust Museum, not for comparison of suffering, but if you don't understand that in the Jewish psyche and DNA, you ain't going to understand the fear. And then we had a Palestinian professor and an Israeli professor giving us the milestones of our history through their eyes, which would be 1948, all the famous wars. And then we went to a Palestinian village which existed before 1948, and some of the members of our group come from there. And this mother was standing there and she started to cry. And she looked down and I said, "What?" And she said, "I found the well that I drew water out of as a child." And what comes out of that is an empathy. And so it's a long process. I'm not going to go into detail, but if anybody wants to import this, please do. It can work with gangs, it can work with schools, all kinds of things. And so what happened was, there's small elements of miracle that happen in these processes. Suddenly one morning I woke up, I said, we've got to do this for the public, because it was so important for our group, because right throughout the war, that clip that you saw right in the beginning was a clip that we made during the last war, when we had a peace tent in Tel Aviv with the sirens and the rockets and you name it. And it was terribly important because so many people who called us traitors and who hate us came to shout at us, but we invited them to come into the circle to talk. And it changes, when you cannot exclude people from the conversation because then they become more radical. So a small miracle happened. Jack DeJoya from Georgetown University happened to be in Palestine and Israel, and he heard about the Parents Circle, invited us, and they became our academic mentor. So we are running the same history through the human eye for many, many groups, generally homogeneous. And we also have a film about this project, which was a group of all walks of life called Two-Sided Story, which you can also use as an illustration in schools. And we've run something like 30 of these projects up to now. It's usually doctors, educators, artists, lawyers, politicians, 15 from each side who go through this whole process, and then they have to do a joint project together. Bassam might want to tell you about the last group, and he has to leave quite soon back to Israel because he's running one of the groups for newly bereaved members or people who will become members, I hope. And so maybe you want to tell them?
So there are a group of Israelis and Palestinians who are not members of the Parent Circle, they are bereaved families, and it's the most difficult group. You can see the first meeting, they really hate each other. And the second meeting, you will see how they discover their own humanity. And they want to know each other and to listen to each other. Because I believe victims can heal victims. And everyone wants to heal. And sometimes we escape from our pain to our pain. We have no other choice. We need to know how to live with this pain. So during as Robi explained, 5 or 6 meetings, including 2 weekends together, the last group, more than 20 families from the 30 families who joined the Parent Circle. So you can see the result when we talk about the narrative. And then you discover that what's the meaning of history? I can create a history for a nation. We wrote the history. You need to question everything. And when you give yourself the ability to know the other side, the history of the other side, their story, in the first place, you paid respect to yourself and to your narrative. Then you want to create a third narrative to see how we can live together. Always I said, past is past. We can talk about the Holocaust another 70 years. We can talk about the Nakba another 70 years. But it doesn't work. We need to look for the future to know how to live together. And in general, when I answer the question of our activities, it's very simple. I said, please go and visit our website. That's it.
But I'm going to make a sales pitch now. Because I believe there are some very creative people here. And I'm going to tell you about a project, and we'd be so grateful if we could get your impact during the next couple of days. One of the things that happened out of this narrative project is we started to travel all over the West Bank, at least I did, with the film. And I kept meeting more and more Palestinian women. And I believe that women have to come to the table now. Nobody asks us, shall we go to war? Nobody asks us, shall we sign a peace agreement? I don't think so. So it's time. And so I'm looking more and more. I run the women's group because I think it's so important. And I kept meeting Palestinian women who were making embroidery, but they didn't have money to buy good thread or good materials, and people were pity buying. And there's nothing worse than pity buying, because it makes people have no dignity. And they don't have any self-esteem. I don't use the word empower. Everybody knows that I never use that word, because I think it's a ridiculous word. And so what happened is that we created, together with Shenkar, which is the Tel Aviv fashion school, a very, very well-known fashion school, we brought students from London, from the London School of Art, and students from Israel, and the Palestinian women. And the Palestinian women first taught the students how to embroider, so it wouldn't be the big white chief coming to show you what to do. And we created a line of embroidered jewelry, but it's too fancy. But we came up with something. If you've noticed my shoes, there is a yellow bird on my shoe. See? Can you see? Okay. So this is a bird. It's part of a project called Taking Steps. And what it is it's a way to increment income for Palestinian women. But it's also a way of getting our message out. We will also have patches with the bird on them, which you can lace into your shoes. And if you wear them, they will have laces which say, taking steps towards peace. Then you will be able to say, the woman I'm running for is, or the woman I'm walking for is, or I'm walking for reconciliation. You take a picture of yourself with the shoes, and you then send it to Instagram. We work with Sachi and Sachi, who do our work pro bono, which is really lucky. They made this clip and a lot of other stuff that we've won prizes for. And they've created a campaign for the shoes. So anybody who's got remarkable ideas of where we can raise another $10,000, we've already raised $10,000, and then we'll be able to start selling. So there you are, there's your challenge. And if you wish to have the shoes, outside is a little postcard. Just fill it in with your size, and I'll make sure that you get them. Yes?
Hi, I'm Jennifer with PwC, and my question is, we heard from Richard Leider earlier around purpose and how purpose takes practice. And you mentioned that this is very hard, the work that you're doing, and so I just wonder, for each of you individually, what are the practices that you put into place for yourself to live your purpose every day?
It's an easy question for me.
Kadima.
You know, in our case, you need to renew your commitment every day, every hour even. Because every day, every hour, you are under the occupation. You are under military occupation. You face checkpoints. You face the difficult times every day. As I said, it's the only way, the right way to make the change. I believe the Israelis must be responsible for their occupation. They occupied us for their benefits, for their security, for their peace, and we go to fight them because of this occupation. So I believe the common enemy for the Israelis and the Palestinians is the occupation. It's not easy, again, why I said you need to renew your commitment, because we are human beings. If you overcome your past, that's it. If you discover your humanity, it's once and forever. We belong to the mankind, not to the animals, and this is the difference between us and the animals. We can live together without killing each other, and the animals cannot, because they must exist. But it's, at the same time, it's a long process to teach yourself, and to teach. It's a way of life. When we say forgive, not because the killer deserves forgiveness, because you deserve peace. You deserve to live in peace with yourself. And when I say a way of life, it's to teach it to your family, to your son. Always I said, my achievement when I convince my son that this is not the way, and I make peace with my son.
This is not work. It's, you were talking about what do you get up with in the morning. This is what gets me up every single morning. One of the problems is you become rather one-dimensional. I find it difficult not to only talk about this work and what is happening. And sometimes I think I might be a crashing bore, But there are so many extraordinary stories and people that you meet around this work. I am privileged to have met the most extraordinary people, and watching how they have coped with this pain and what they did with it is so important. And I must say that if we're talking about the occupation, I think it's terribly important to also understand that the occupation affects the daily life of Israelis, and that it is killing the moral fiber of Israel. Because when you take a young boy and he stands at a checkpoint, and think about your kids or your brothers or sisters, and they have to make decisions. And I love Israel, please, don't get me wrong. But a young man standing at a checkpoint and he has to make a decision about a woman who comes with a dress, something like mine but bigger. Is she pregnant or is she carrying something underneath the dress? And he doesn't let her go through the checkpoint. And she might have the baby there, and maybe the baby dies. This isn't fiction. This happens. This kid who didn't let her go through is not a monster. He comes from a pretty normative background. But this is what he's faced with to make this decision. So he goes home to his parents on a Friday night for Shabbat dinner, and he can't tell them. Sometimes they come to tell us. But what happens is he may go out and drink, and get drunk and have an accident, and more people are killed on the roads in Israel than in the conflict, and there's more domestic violence and more violence in the schools. Can you imagine that? So there must be some consequence of this occupation. We have to get out of the occupied territories. We really do, and that's how you can support. Please don't be pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. Please be pro a solution, because when you are pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, what you are doing is feeling very good about yourself, no doubt. But you are actually importing our conflict into your country and creating hatred between Jews and Muslims. That's not what you need. Try to be part of the solution. Try to talk to your congressman. Try to support Israel to get out of the occupied territories. I know that sounds strange. I really mean it. There was a man standing here for hours who lost hope.
I just want to add one sentence. If you kill the morals or the values in Baghdad or Kabul or Palestine, you will kill them also in Washington and in New York.
Did I understand you say that you needed $10,000 to continue your work?
That was my question.
Oh.
We need the 10. Where are you? Anybody that talks about money, I'm immediately there.
Yeah.
Yes, we need the $10,000 to make the first purchase so that we have the shoes to sew. So if anybody come up with a remarkable idea, we actually spoke at Women in the World. Do you know Women in the World that they had in New York now? A Palestinian partner came with me and somebody gave us $10,000 on the spot. And that's partly for the patches, and now we need this for the shoes. Is that a very rude thing of me to do?
No, but you're not being specific enough. So you need $10,000 and we could raise it right here?
Yes, you can if you want. Of course,
Okay.
nobody'd be more
So
delighted.
we can personally, there's a way to personally support you?
Absolutely.
And through our organizations.
If you go out and take our
Okay.
brochures, by the way, in the back of the room is the one person that manages the whole of the American Friends of the Parents Circle.
Okay.
And without her, nothing happens. And her name is Shiri Orian. I know that there are a lot of academics around here. So perhaps if you would like to have our film, The Two-Sided Story, which comes with a guide, you might like to use that in your classrooms.
Right.
Or any of the other films. There's a film about Bassam called Within the Eye of the Storm, and the film about South Africa, One Day After Peace.
Well, I would like to commit personally and through my organization to supporting your work. So I will look for you afterwards. And I hope many others here do the same.
Yeah, just to kick it off, I'd be happy to donate $10,000.
Yeah. Hey, wait a minute. You can't just run away. Where is he?
I think you should have. I think you should. So this is Nick Craig. I think you should have asked for more money.
Motek, that was just for the shoes.
Oh, that's
okay.
just. Oh, okay. So we can
We
work
run
our
a
way
summer
up now.
camp.
That's good. That's good.
There are plenty of projects that if you want to support, it's the dialogue meetings in schools. We talk sometimes when we have this is really important. I mean, the shoes are part of creating income for women, but the work that we do on the ground is supported also by USAID and by the EU, the narrative projects. But there are small things like the summer camp, like running the office. We run 2 offices because it's not an equal situation. There is Israel and the Palestinians. And so we have 2 directors, 2 offices. It's like Noah's Ark. It's 2 of everything. But that is our way of not being patronizing and of trying whichever way we can to create an equal situation. So nobody makes a decision without anybody else. Nobody can write a check without the other. Nobody can do anything without the other. It makes life pretty difficult, but it's worth everything because there is this trust. You know, if I was sick today, I would be delighted if Bassam would come and talk for me. And it's quite vice versa as well. And so going into schools, if you would know anything about it, I don't know, who's been to Israel here? Wow, a lot.
You have any idea who occupied who?
So we talk in schools to 17 and 18-year-old before they go to the army in Israel. If you will walk into an average Israeli classroom and you will say to them, who of you have ever met a Palestinian? It will actually be nobody. Who speaks Arabic? Maybe one. And who's been overseas? Almost all the class. So there's this total cutoff, which of course creates fear. And that fear is hatred afterwards. And if you go into a Palestinian school, I've been into a school where all the girls were covered in East Jerusalem, and this kid stood up. She was pretty brave. You're not going to like this, but she said to me, your son deserved to die. And I looked at her and I thought, normally you would get up and walk out, right? But I recognized that she's a bereaved child. And she started to tell me the whole story of her family. And I asked her, well, how did your mother feel and how was everybody? And in the end, I said, and what color were the tears? And she got it, you know, she came and she hugged me. Can you imagine how brave that kid was, really? Because she was the hero of the class. But she'd never met an Israeli who was not in uniform or a settler. Why would she think I'm any different?
It's beautiful. I mean, one of my questions for the two of you, I've been to Israel many times, and I've also was in Berlin before the wall came down. And it's shocking when you see the wall because it reminds me of the Berlin Wall. So you go, how is this possible? So you realize how much division there is. Before you made the choice to do what you've done, you were either Palestinian or Israeli, and everybody was on your side. When you made this choice, what's interesting is I'm curious about your relationship with your own kind, your relationship with your Palestinian colleagues, your relationship with your Israeli friends, because how has this changed your relationship with those who you were a part of?
Yeah, in fact, when we talk about the wall, I am not against the wall. If you think it's to protect you from the terrorist attacks, you can make another 10 meters higher. It's 10 meters, they can add another 10 meters. But make it in your garden, in your border, not in my garden, and not in the West Bank. And one day, this wall will fail, absolutely. It's a wall of shame. You know, it's not easy to argue with people like us. I didn't come from outside, from any university, to say to the Palestinians, this is right, this is wrong, you need to act in this way. No, I am from there. I spent 7 years in the Israeli jails. I lost my daughter. I live every day under this occupation. So I have the right to talk. And the people must listen to me. It's up to you if you decide to talk and to represent the minority who decide to talk, or to represent the majority who keep silence. Always I said the worst already happened. When they kill my daughter, they kill my fear. I have another 5 kids. They deserve to live and to exist. And we will do our best to protect them by spreading the message everywhere. I never lost any of my friends. I have thousands of friends who I met them during the 7 years in jail. But many of them don't agree with me, and I understand them, but they respect me. So we are safe. And we are not killing each other because of friends or because of the culture. We need to learn how to face ourselves and to know that even if we are swimming against the current or the direction, to believe in what we are doing.
Well, Bassam is right. We have a standing. You know, also people can be rather patronizing. They say, she's bereaved, she's a little bit weird, you know. But I was always weird, so it doesn't really, it doesn't really make any difference. But yes, of course, I get death threats and stuff like that. But I have no fear. It is the most freeing thing. I told you, when you're not a victim, you're free. And I'm totally free and I have no fear. And once a psychologist, I went to a psychologist to get, after David was killed, to think she could help. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but anyway, she said to me, you're now free. It was terribly boring. So I came the next time because I felt embarrassed that I'd only been once, and it really was boring. And she said to me, Robi, there's nothing I can do for you. You're now free. And I said, what? She said, yes, you're free because you'll have no fear and you'll do great things. And you know, I was furious. I went away and I spent the whole night very angry with her. And then I came to a demonstration in Tel Aviv. You know, like you see in Evita with Eva Peron. It's only with 60,000 people. And I walked up onto the stage and I realized, suddenly it hit me, I'm not afraid. It's not that I think I'm so wonderful. I'm so convinced about what we're doing, about the need for reconciliation, that nothing makes me frightened. I travel all over the West Bank, and sometimes it's dangerous. And I've been, you know, attacked by certain Palestinians and Israelis. It's fine. The question is, can you listen to what they're saying? And over the last war, it was very sad because I saw that the right wing and the left wing were using equally cruel rhetoric about each other. And that's no good. And very often the Palestinian and the Israeli rhetoric is a mirror image. They say there's no one to talk to, we say there's no one to talk to, but without knowing. And that's the point.
Robi and Bassam, I'm so glad that you'll be with us for the rest of the week. I think we're really honored to have you with us, and I'd just like to invite everyone with a round of applause to thank you for being with us. Thank you so much.